The humility of a great servant leader is a tough thing to grasp.
Think of about every CEO or top coach out there and the lifestyle that goes with that. You get this automatic association of wealth with positions of power. Coach John Wooden would celebrate national championships. He had 10 to be exact. But he would return to here, a condo in Encino. Why am I telling you this?
You have just won your 10th national championship in the last...
I think this year's fellows follow the model of the humble servant leader. Each of them created opportunity in service of the greater good, in service to the team. And they did it with grit, perseverance, and humility. Let's talk about Dr. Judy Choe. She's an ER doctor at UCLA Ronald Reagan Hospital. When the pandemic hit, it didn't hit her spirit. She got inspired.
I had a friend who wrote an op-ed, and she was appealing to the billionaires of the world, asking them to make a difference to help with the resources. And I thought to myself, well, I can do something to help close that resource gap.
So Judy organized a drive with 10 fellow students to collect personal protective equipment for some of the organizations facing a shortage.
So for a month, we went to local businesses, nail salons, hardware stores, and dentists to ask them for their help in donating PPE after they had actually closed in the early phases of the pandemic. We had collected in total over 5,000 pieces of PPE. We donated it to local hospitals and clinics in need. And when they received it, they were in shock. I came to Anderson from New York City, where I worked in two of the busiest hospitals. So in the spring of 2020, during the exponential logarithmic phase, where everybody was watching what was unfolding, I was really scared. But all I knew is I needed to drop everything and get back to New York City as soon as possible.
And so you went.
I did. When I got there, I was scared, and there was fear and empty streets all across the city. You wouldn't recognize New York City the way it was in the spring of 2020. But I went to work, 12-hour shifts every day for 2 weeks. And since there wasn't a vaccine, we put on our PPE every single day and never took it off.
Judy, you have courage and initiative, and you did it for a cause greater than yourself. You are a real inspiration to me and to the Anderson School.
Now let's talk about Miranda Fang. Her type of perseverance is different. She likes to think through big strategic problems by looking at the road ahead.
So Miranda, I'm curious, how much do you run?
Well, I love running. I think probably over the past year, I've run about 2,800 miles.
She runs it out, as they say. Miranda's worked on some big problems as a consultant at Deloitte. One is near and dear to me. She compiled a report on driving equity across the C-suite. And she's putting equity as the top priority in her work as president of Net Impact here at Anderson.
Now with Net Impact, I understand that you're leading the group with a new mission statement.
Yes, we want to make sure that all members have the opportunity to drive impact in their jobs, no matter what their role is or where they work. Because really, there's potential to drive impact and equity anywhere. And our mission at Net Impact is to drive learning and career opportunities focused on equity and justice.
There is so much to talk about with Miranda. She worked for Teach for America. She's in our anti-racist working groups, and she's in our Anderson Venture Impact Partners program focusing on companies in the menopause space because they don't get the investor attention they deserve. She created awareness around LA's homeless populations in her volunteer work with Rich City, Poor Man. And she volunteered at Deloitte too. Well, she led a group called Step Up to help nonprofits scale up using the same kind of frameworks Deloitte offers its large clients. Miranda headed up a 5-year strat plan with them.
We developed 3 pillars around important areas. The first being around affordable housing and homelessness, second around public education, and the third around financial literacy. And we're helping nonprofits scale and accelerate their impact in these areas.
Miranda, I have to say, you are why this fellowship was created. You are a leader, and you will continue to be a leader. And I thank you.
You never stand still. I try to point out to my players individually, they either continue to improve a little or they go backward.
Now, Coach's philosophies were not just about functioning better at what you do. I was reminded of this when I met Uzi Aledros, who reassessed his whole life recently.
I've always been a person who loved to learn new things. Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to learn as much as possible. But then when my daughter was born, I realized that I needed to learn for all of us. It wasn't just about me anymore.
Children have a way of recalibrating priorities, don't they?
They do, and so I decided to go back to school so that I could grow professionally for myself and for the family. But then everything got turned upside down.
With the pandemic?
That was a part of it, but the real wake-up call for me was a thyroid cancer diagnosis. I was forced to make every thought and decision count. I realized that, today or tomorrow could be my last day here, and I needed to make as much impact as possible. At the time, the pandemic was still going on, and I was going into work every day. We had one of the largest corporate outbreaks in LA County, but the work that we were doing was critical to national security. I was nervous about getting sick and just about how fragile everything was at the time.
Cancer while in school, working on critical government projects, and trying to be a good father. Wow.
It was Coach's idea that leadership is applicable to the entire person. Leadership doesn't stop when you leave work. It doesn't stop in the face of adversity. In some ways, I think leadership at home is even more difficult with a daughter who looks up to me.
Grit, perseverance, humility.
You can't let the challenges stop you. Cancer was in the hands of the doctors and God, not me. So I poured myself into school and just enjoyed it.
He's not telling you he had 2 surgeries during a full course load. He only missed 3 classes. And for that quarter, Uzi got a 4.0.
I never thought to make each day the most productive, the most enjoyable until that point. I need to live every day like it's the best day of my life.
That sounds just like Coach, Uzi. I know he'd be proud to hear you say just that.
The pandemic brought out the best in some of us, despite circumstances that seemed impossible. Back when COVID started spreading here, LA was facing a situation where its medical systems were going to be overwhelmed. And that's where Jasson Crockett rose to the challenge.
I was working in the mayor's office focused on supporting the growth of the small business community in LA and working on how LA's tech community could grow equitably. And we had made real progress. We had launched Pledge LA and the WeSim initiative. And then the pandemic hit. Everything changed. Everyone had to shift priorities to respond to the crisis.
They saw what was coming with COVID, all that was happening in New York, like we heard from Judy Choe.
So I was asked to convene a meeting with the heads of all the hospitals within LA County. And at that point, we knew the risks, but a broad strategy had yet to come into focus. The one thing that we did know though then was we absolutely had to avoid the long lines of patients wrapping around hospitals like what we saw in bigger cities like New York.
Knowing the risks is fine, but managing them and addressing them is another thing.
Oh, absolutely, so true. And frankly, we have an amazing emergency response department within both the city and county. Many have experience responding to earthquakes and fires, but no one had ever responded to a pandemic. So there was a lot of learning by doing, and really the only thing that was not allowed was standing flat-footed.
So Jasson spearheaded the creation of a medical relief center down at the LA Convention Center.
We built an expandable medical center with over 150 beds to help address the needs of low acuity patients and keep hospitals from getting overwhelmed. And thanks to the mayor, he really early on championed making testing available to all Angelenos who needed it.
And this medical center, it all had to happen in a matter of weeks. Am I right?
Yeah, you're right. And at the same time, we were still supporting our small business community. Only by then, it was really about trying to help keep them afloat. We created industry committees to help inform reopening protocols and operating protocols. And then we also created a COVID relief fund to provide financial assistance for businesses who were largely unbanked and weren't able to get PPP loans.
Jasson's the real deal. Before all this, he worked for AmeriCorps and the Nonprofit Finance Fund, places of change. And way before that, he learned about Coach and the pyramid.
My grandfather played an instrumental role in my life. He actually helped raise me, and he himself was a coach. During the '95 championship when UCLA was playing Arkansas, he was the one who actually told me who John Wooden was and taught me about the pyramid of success and coaching with a high EQ. It's not just a way to coach a team, it's a way to lead a life.
This experience of seeing Coach endure long after he's been gone, this has been a great privilege in my life. For all the fellows who have come through, you know, the man just keeps on giving.